friends, welcome to Changing Tracks. Today we have a special guest all the way from Jacksonville. Mike, how are you? Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself, where you're from.
Sure, my name is Mike Hardin, and I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, in the United States of America. And I was the 9th of 12 children, and we were a Catholic family, very poor, and but not unhappy. You know, same mom, same dad. We went to Catholic schools, attended schools, and then went to public school and high school.
What kind of relationship did you have with God?
Yeah, I would love to say that I was a great Catholic, but that wouldn't exactly be true. But I was kind of prompted along by my mom, who was a convert. She was a Methodist and married my dad. And he was Catholic, raised Catholic, but didn't practice very much. The one thing I remember is he never went to communion all our life. Didn't talk, I never actually had a conversation with my dad in the time growing up in the family with him. So, but I did learn that the Catholic faith, you know, was founded by Jesus, and I did learn that we had sacraments and that was supposed to be better than the other churches. But as I grew older and saw that what you might expect from people who were trying to get to heaven or seeking holiness was not what I saw, not from the priest at the parish level, not from my own parents. Now, my mom was constantly the convert, was constantly trying to do the right thing, but she had only Protestant methodology to rely on. So she was going back to her growing up years and times to try and piece together what it actually meant to know God and to come to a relationship with Jesus. And so she did it through what's called the Charismatic Renewal.
When you saw all this, what did you think?
Well, in being involved in the charismatic movement, I began to take that idea that a relationship with Jesus Christ was a real thing and something to seek. And so I approached that just in my naivete that, you know, all right, Jesus, I want to love you. I want to be a part. And just by opening myself up, that little crack there, I think that the sacraments that had been bequeathed to me, you know, through the church, were able to operate a little bit. Now, unfortunately for me, I was working from a detriment of, I had a dad who was very enslaved to pornography. So the 7 boys in our family all discovered Dad's porno stash at very early ages. Some of them were 5, I was 9. And so you have that grave sin hanging around your neck when you become entranced by impurity, you know, because the devil has his own temptations, and they draw us naturally, you know, because of our fallen nature. And so I had that grave sin, you know, you fall into that. He never knew we were looking at it, but we certainly knew, and then you crave more. And so then that changes your image of women. And so I go to high school and I'm thinking, gee, I need to be attractive to women. That's what I need to, not searching for God. And so as I entered into high school, that whole charismatic thing fell away. And I was reaching that point where I really wanted to be, you know, a ladies' man, you know, and be attractive to the women. The next year when I started into high school, I had, you know, all these years of looking at my dad's impure things and all the thoughts and actions that go with that. And so the devil was delighted to acquaint me with young ladies who would help me get further into grave sin. So basically by the time I graduated from high school, I still believed in God. I would still pray if, like, the football team was losing and it was getting down to the last minutes. I'd be like, oh, help me, God, please help. And usually he would. It was crazy how he would still bless just from that little bit of belief that I still had in my heart. But to actually, you know, believe that the Catholic Church was the way, I had pretty much become convinced that it couldn't be the way.
So you therefore rejected the Catholic faith. Did you believe in other...
Yeah, not so much. Just kind of like, okay, God is real. He's out there. But certainly he's not going to hold it against me for, you know, I'm not being unfair to other people. You know, these women want me, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with playing football and hurting people. You know, that's how you get popular, and that's how you entertain the crowds. And, you know, so I just justified, like we do, whenever we choose to do something we know is wrong, we just justify it. You know, we make up our minds that it's okay for me to do this, even though I know in my heart it's not right, because, you know, and so I just justified. I didn't necessarily think that other Christian faiths were better, and I never thought God wasn't real. I just didn't think he would really be upset with me just for living in daily mortal sin for decades on end, you know. And I didn't see any reason to go to confession, because I'd already done that for my final time when I was confirmed. You know, it was kind of understood that you never had to go to confession again after you got confirmed, so because you're pretty much perfect now, I guess. You know. And I guess really we just thought, you know, by the time we got confirmed in 8th grade, that it doesn't, you know, this is just some ritual that the church has. It's not changing us. But we never had anything taught different to us, so it would have been hard to know it unless somebody were to tell us how this sacrament was actually altering our very nature and making us different people by, you know, confirming that imprint of the Holy Spirit on our soul.
After high school, did you go to college?
Went to high school and then graduated. Initially, when I graduated, I went to work and worked. I was working at a bank, and then I switched over and worked at a fish market so that I could work with my brother.
How did this change happen?
I would say it got much worse as time went by. Where I eventually, after leaving the fish market, I went to work at UPS and was in college, and a neighbor of mine was in insurance. And so he was telling his boss that, oh, this guy's really impressive. He's, you know, he's smart, and he knows, he's got a good heart. And so I interviewed with his boss, and he hired me to come to work selling insurance. So I was glad to go to work in a professional setting, but the people I went to work with all seemed to be like children in grown men's bodies. Men, no faithfulness to spouses, no integrity. You know, it was just, you just saw the worst of mankind. And so those were the people I hung out with. So everything was about a party. You know, everything was about going out and getting drunk. And
were you dating anyone at that time, or were you married?
No, I wasn't married. Well, I did get married, but I wasn't when I initially started working in insurance and was around bad people. And then I met this wonderful, beautiful, virtuous little girl. And I thought, wow, that girl is way too good for me. I can't be with her. She's, you know, she's just not in my league. Now, she thought I was outstanding, you know, because I was going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and, you know, doing all those things, going out running every morning that you do to attract women, and it, you know, instead of building virtue and becoming a real man. So anyways, I met this girl, Tracy, and we began dating, and I began thinking, wow, I'm really not very good, but I could change. You know, I'm pretty good at heart, I think. So, so we began our dating process, and I wanted to marry her, and I asked her dad, and he said no. And he said, wait another year. So I did. I waited another year, and then asked, and he said, all right, I guess you're not going away. So it took about 1 more year. So we were together 3 years before we actually got married. But before we got married, this is where my conversion kind of started. My mother, now there's 7 of us boys, and we had all quit having anything to do with Mom, because she was so holy. You know, she'd go to daily mass, she'd pray the rosary every day. She was weird. And now, meanwhile, my dad has become so ill that he is paralyzed from the neck down from repeated strokes. And he's in a nursing home called St. Catherine Labouré. And so we'd go to visit him, me and Tracy, once a month. I'd drop in and spend a couple hours on Sunday. So we were thinking about, or I was thinking, gee, it's really bad that I haven't had anything to do with Mom for 2 years. This point. And so right around the age of 25, I thought, I ought to call Mom. So I called up my mom. Hey, Mom, how you doing? She's like, great, Michael. How are you? Like, oh, I'm doing all right. I said, I was thinking, you know, I really ought to drop by and visit you. And she goes, I've got some leftovers. Why don't you come over and I'll feed you leftovers? I'm like, oh, okay. So I went over that next Thursday and had lunch with her and ate her leftovers, and we played games. And so she's like, would you come back next Thursday? I was like, yeah, sure. I was thinking, man, I'm really good. I'm so much better than all my brothers. You know, it's funny how the devil works on that, you know. So I started going back every Thursday. So after about 3-4 months of going there every Thursday and having lunch with her and chatting and just spending a couple hours with Mom, she said, Michael, would you do me a big favor? I said, sure, Mom, anything. What can I do? She said, would you start praying a daily rosary for your dad? You know, he's paralyzed from the neck down. Just pray that God will heal him, because, you know, the charismatic movement was big into the healing. And I said, yeah, and I'm thinking, that's never going to happen. And she said, or that God will take him home. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, so I give God an option. That sounds right. So I was like, sure, I can do that. I began to feel so holy because I was spending, I mean, it was literally 12, 15 minutes a day that I turned off the rock and roll channel and prayed just for my dad. I was amazing. I could feel the holiness just filling me. I was kind of surprised other people couldn't see it in me. About, I think it was maybe 8 months later, my dad died. He passed away. And so then my mom says, well, Mike, now you've got to pray that rosary for your dad's soul because he's in purgatory. And I thought, oh, that's so cute. Mom's so childish. She believes in purgatory. She thinks there's like a little bad people place you go after you die where you have to pay for all the things you did on earth. I knew better, you know, because that was so silly. But I loved my mom, and I was used to praying the rosary now. So I said, sure, I'll keep praying it. So I continued praying my rosary and growing imminently, you know, in my holiness, I could tell.
What made you understand that praying the rosary and keeping the commandments would lead to holiness? What changed in you?
After 9.5 months, now my wife and I have been married. We got married just before my dad died, and so he was there in his wheelchair. And so after about 9.5 months after he died, which was, I would say, I guess about 4 months after we were married, might have that time off a little bit. But 9.5 months, been praying the rosary every day, still meeting with Mom every week, and playing games and eating her food. And and we go to bed, and it's like suddenly I'm at my mom's house, sitting in the same chair I always sit at her table, with a game of Boggle in front of us, which is a game with letters where you try and find words in it. And I'm looking at the board, and I know my dad is in the room. I'm like, that's weird, Dad's dead. And I look up, and there's a hallway that comes into the dining room. And walking down the hallway is this young man. He looks like he's about 33. He doesn't really look like my dad, a little bit, but not really. But I know with every fiber of my being, that's my dad. And I say, Dad. And he says, yes, son. I said, you're alive? He said, I've never been so alive. I said, but I saw you dead in that casket. He said, son, I'm alive, and your rosaries have helped me get to heaven. And I said, I think it's a dream, come here. And he said, okay. He walked over, and I grabbed him by the cheek, and I felt skin. Now, that's the only moment I can recollect in a dream when I actually felt a sensory, you know, I felt pain, but I've never reached out and felt something with my fingers in a dream, and it felt skin. I said, so you're really alive? He said, yes, and your rosaries really helped me get into heaven. So don't quit praying the rosary every day. Pray that rosary. So I was like, okay, Dad. And then I had all these questions about heaven, you know, is there really angels? Do you lounge around on the clouds? All these stupid things that, you know, if you have absolutely zero idea what our faith's about and what, you know, that would be about all you could come up with. And so I had all these dumb things to ask him, but they all just kind of went out of my mind. And so I grabbed him by the hand, and we walked through the dining room, out the front door, out through the living room, and then out the front door. Now, my mom's house was built up with a basement. I don't know why they would do that in Florida. But we had 14 steps down to the street. So we walked together down to the street, and as we started to walk across the street, he disappeared. And I was suddenly filled with great sadness, like, oh no, Dad's gone. Because that was the only conversation I'd ever had with my father. And it was 9.5 months after he'd gone somewhere else. And then suddenly I was filled with this joy, this bubbling up inside of me, and I was like, Dad's in heaven, that's awesome, that's a great thing. And so I began to feel this hope, and I think of it as the hope of the Holy Spirit kind of reminding me that there was a lot more to life than what I thought, you know, what I had come to believe life was about. And thinking about it, you know, it was just a dream. Just a dream. I might as well, I'm already praying the rosary, I'll just keep offering it for Dad. So I continued to offer my rosaries for Dad's soul to be released from purgatory.
Okay, so you had this dream, but you didn't change at all. Were you that hard to convince? What happened after that?
2 weeks later, I'm back at Mom's house when I go to sleep. There I am. This time I'm sitting in Mom's chair. I've come to think of that as the believer's chair. And sitting across from me where I was sitting is the unbeliever's chair, and my brother, who left the Catholic Church and became Southern Baptist, is sitting there. And suddenly I know Dad's in the room. And I turn around to look down the hall, and there comes that same young man walking. Now the brother, he's just gone. You know, he was stunned when I was like, Dad's here. And I looked at him, he's like, and I turned around, and then Pat was never, wasn't part of the dream anymore. And here's Dad coming down the hallway. I said, so you're really alive? He said, yes, son, I'm really alive. I told you I was alive. And I said, and so you're really in heaven? He said, yes, and your rosaries really helped me to get there, son. Don't quit praying the rosary every day. I said, you know what, Dad? I thought about it, and I thought it was a dream. He said, I know. I said, come here. So we walked over, and at that point I was a big weightlifter and worked out all the time. And I said, let me pick you up. He goes, okay. And I reached down and I picked him up, and he didn't weigh anything. I said, whoa, you don't weigh anything. He goes, I know, isn't it cool? I was like, I don't get it, but okay. So I set him down, and he just kept encouraging me. You gotta pray the rosary every day. I want you to be in heaven with me. You've gotta pray the daily rosary. And I thought, gee, last time when I held his hand and walked out with him, he disappeared. I don't want him to leave. So I put my arm around him, and we started walking out, and he was just comforting me and telling me how much I would love to be in heaven. And we walked down the steps, and as we got to the bottom of the steps, I'm thinking, now disappear. No, he was still there. So we walked across the street, and we stopped. We crossed the street, and he looked at me, and I said, you gotta go, don't you? He said, yeah. I said, all right. I love you, Dad. He said, I love you too. And then he slowly faded and was gone. And I was filled with elation. So I woke my wife up again to tell her about it. Now, you would think that that kind of a conversion would make me an automatic, amazing Catholic Christian, but instead I didn't go to Mass or church.
And your life didn't change at all?
Pretty well, not, you know, I was married, so it wasn't the wild, but still we'd go out with the guys and go drinking once every couple weeks and, you know, get sloshed and come home. And I kept a full bar at home. I deserved at least 2 or 3 doubles each night, because if you don't kill yourself, you're not really having fun. Only I didn't know that then. I just thought, you know, that's what I deserved for working so hard. So I really hadn't learned a lot from my dad actually, you know, begging me to see the light. So I get a job offer to go to work for another company, and they're going to double my pay, another insurance company. So I talk with my mom, and she's like, well, why not? And I'm still having lunch every week with my mom. she's like, well, why don't you pray about it and fast? And I'm like, fast? She's like, just like bread and water for a day. I'm like, okay, so I tried it. It was the most horrible experience of my life. Pounding headaches. I just couldn't. I mean, I bought like 2 big loaves of French bread, ate them. I was still ravenous. You know, it was like, oh, wow, do I need this much food? And so at the end, I was like, Mom, this fasting thing didn't help. I don't know whether I should give up my agency and take a job with this other insurance company. And she said, well, just offer it up and just ask God to enlighten you. So before I went to bed, I was like, all right, God, I don't know why you wanted me to do this, but if I'm not supposed to take that job, just do something to let me know, because I don't hear your voice here. So let me know I'm not supposed to take that job. Give me a DUI or something. The next day I got a DUI and went to jail for 10 days. I had gone out with some friends to celebrate because I had passed my board exams for certified financial planner to do investing for people and that. And so they all took me out and were treating me to beers, and then I got in the car and drove home, got arrested, went to jail.
What did that penalty imply for you?
Well, before the DUI, I believed God was real. I believed purgatory was real. I believed heaven was real. I didn't see how I was supposed to get there or whether I really needed to do anything much different, because I was still, in my heart, I still reasoned out that I was a good person. I wasn't cheating people or stealing anything. You know, I wasn't running around on my wife, so I didn't really see where I, needed to alter anything that I was doing in my life. I felt like, hey, I'm a pretty good dude. I'm doing this rosary every day, so I'm a pretty holy person. So then I get the DUI, and I realize, you're an idiot. You've destroyed your life. You're about to lose your license. You'll probably lose your job. It wouldn't be out of the realm for your wife to leave you. We had been contracepting from the time we were married. We asked our priest, and he said, you're not supposed to, but you got to do whatever keeps the love alive. So we did, of course, naturally. He gave us an out, so we jumped right on it. And so we were taking the pill. What I didn't know is at this point, my wife was already talking to lawyers about divorcing me. I thought I was great. I only went out with my friends every couple weeks to get drunk, and I made a paycheck, was making a living. But she wanted a real life. She wanted a family. She wanted her life to have purpose, not just getting drunk with our friends and playing games. And that's not really what our lives are about. And she knew that because she was so much of a better person than what I had become over the years. So I get the DUI, I go to jail, I realize what a failure I am, and I just said, God, please help me. Help me to do the right thing here. So when I talked to my wife, I just told her, okay, I'm gonna quit drinking, I'm just gonna quit partying with the friends, and she said then her heart was changed towards divorcing me. So there I am in jail, it's cold. They give you one thin blanket here in Jacksonville, Florida. One thin blanket, you can use it as a pillow or you can cover up with it. So I was using it as a pillow because otherwise you can't really sleep with your head laying down on a metal bed, because that's all it is, just a sheet of metal that's welded into the wall. They're not trying to make you comfortable, and they're doing a good job. I began to think, man, this is terrible. The TVs were broken, so they were always like, there was nothing to write with. They would bring in a newspaper, the black guys would take it, and the white people couldn't look at it.
Mike, please forgive me, but we have run out of time. We're going to have to leave our viewers in suspense to see how God turned around your life in such an amazing way. We will continue again in the next program, okay? So me and you, we can continue to chat together here. Dear friends, I am going to continue here with Mike. And next week, you can follow the rest of his story. So I'm going to leave you in suspense until next time. Thank you for watching.
And suddenly it felt like somebody dumped fire on my head. And this fire came down through my body all the way, and when it hit my toes, it turned into cold, bubbling water that came flowing back up through me. I go to sleep 2.5 weeks after, and I've been praying for Mom, and the phone rings. And before I pick it up, I know it's Mom. Now it's a dream again, but I pick it up and I say, Mom? She said, yes, son. I said, so are you calling from heaven? And she said, yes. Can you imagine the long distance charges? I was sitting looking at the Sacred Heart of Jesus picture and saying, all right, Lord, I don't understand. How did I become such a bad person? I thought I was a good person in my heart. I thought I was good. And I was so rotten. And it was like he just answered me and he said, you didn't know. But what about all the other kids out there that don't know? And he said, you teach them.